welcome. Those of you who might notice such details will notice that the podcast was started at precisely 4 minutes past 4. That's because this week it's Sonic Talk 404. Can you believe such a thing? It's astonishing. And we want to say thank you to all of you guys in the chat room. We got a nice fulsome chat room, as I do like to say, and also we got a nice fulsome panel as well. And also want to say thank you very much to our sponsors, who are obviously iZotope. iZotope will be announcing, or I'll be announcing, the details of a competition where you could win OZONE 6.1, folks, a fully functioning version straight to your account. No strings attached. You just have to enter competition, but that will be coming up after about halfway through, something like that. And also we'll be telling you a little bit about OZONE as well. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us. That's it. 404 jokes, probably that's it. So I'm going to go over here to Mr. Jem Godfrey, who I haven't seen for a very long time. Jem Godfrey is composer, producer, has roots in popular music, done a lot of stuff with kind of high pop, I think it would be fair to say. In fact, I'm pretty sure, Jem, you sent me an email not that long ago saying I would like to be on the show, but I'm currently tuning vocals. So I'm guessing you might have been working on a project, although I've rather spoiled it because you probably now don't want to tell me what that was, but I figured I'd give it a try anyway.
No, I've been doing a lot of stuff back on Planet Pop, doing a lot of co-production with Gary Barlow.
Wow.
So we've been doing, he co-wrote the songs for a musical, Finding Neverland, which is on Broadway in New York, and as opposed to any other Broadway. And so, yeah, there's like an album of 17 tracks. So it's like an artist, rather than it being like the sort of cast album, it's like artists, Jennifer Lopez and all kinds of Christina Aguilera, all kinds of people. So, yeah, I kind of dropped in at the deep end on that. It's been brilliant fun.
Wow, that sounds awesome. Gary Barlow, in case people don't know the name or made the association, he's obviously the kind of the main songwriting talent, production talent possibly behind Take That, who were kind of one of the original, I guess they were worldwide famous bands. I don't know if they were huge over here, and they've recently had a resurgence, smaller, less of them in the group, but they've been doing a sort of dad group maybe rather than a boy band these days. But he's got a dad band. He's got his fingers in a lot of pies. So have you been actually working, in the same room, or is it more of a remote collaboration, or how's it been working?
It's kind of been more remote. I mean, because obviously a lot of them are in America, so I've been stuck down here in Sussex. So it tends to come down the pipes, and then you work on it and just sort of bat it back. And because the problem is, of course, is doing a lot of stuff with America, with LA. I'll sort of do a full day's work and then get to 5 o'clock, and then they'll wake up and go, right, we want this changed and that changed. And so it's kind of, ends up being like 18-hour day. But that's all right. Yeah.
So what out of interest, what are you using for that ping pong effect? Are you just doing bounces and sending the mixes, or are you working on open sessions via some clever collaborative tool?
We transfer.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just emailing MP3s over, and then, full fat mixes and a lot of stems these days. I've noticed it's all changed since I was doing this before. Everybody wants stems of everything ever.
Yeah, I can imagine that does tend to be the sort of thing that at the end of a long day you might want to automate and wake up and have it and know it's all done, right?
Yeah, I need a little man.
Yes, I think an assistant is what that's known as, isn't it, for that sort of thing? But I guess, they're hard to come by because there aren't any proper studios anymore, so assistants don't really exist unless you can find a local help.
Well, the good thing, I mean, Pro Tools 11 has helped a lot because obviously I've been doing offline bounces, but of course the problem with that is if you've accidentally selected the wrong output, as I did, sent about 0.5 gigabytes worth of silence to America, that went quite well.
How did that go down? Were they pleased with that particular version? I imagine it.
Over the moon. Yeah, over the moon. It was. It's the. That went well.
Yes, actually, Jem, this is the best yet. If you could make the other ones more like this, then we'll all be happy. Anyway, Rich Hilton was nodding sagely there because I'm guessing, what with the work that Chic's doing, I'm guessing the productions you do with Nile Rodgers. Nile Rodgers, of course, being the guy that you're working for in the studio and member of Chic. You were nodding sagely there at the STEM creation part of what Jem was saying there, right?
Yeah, well, it was perhaps more diplomatic than rolling my eyes.
I couldn't see. I've only got a very small window of. I can't make out the details, so that the minutiae of body language is rather lost. You have to be more dramatic
That's
with your.
probably for the best in this case because I was extending the bird at the time.
Okay. Probably no more. We won't say any more. Have you been doing many? Have you been working on stems this week, or are you?
No. Actually, I've been recently mixing some live music that we've done because we have a gig coming up and haven't played one in a while, and the band needs to hear where we left off. So I've actually been mixing a live show. We record our live shows to multi-track pretty much all the time, and I've got tons and tons of them, and they're fun, great fun, and a lot of work to mix.
Yeah, I can imagine. I suppose if every gig is a different venue, templates are less, and also you get different mic sets.
I don't even start from there, but I'm a guy who never uses a preset on a piece of outboard gear anyway, so I don't start really the live mixes from templates. I'd rather start fresh. Right. I can do it better tomorrow.
Right, well, that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. I also noticed nodding sagely there in the corner, Mr. Marc Doty, who we have with us again. Marc Doty, of course, worked with the Bog Movie Foundation, synthesizer reviewer, a happy recipient of, I think, we hear you have a Prophet 6, which I think, well, I've got some things to... There it is. Look at that. What a lucky guy. So does that mean it's in production now?
No, this is a beta that they sent me for demonstration. But I think it is in production. It's just that they're not produced yet, according to my knowledge.
Wow. So how long have you had it?
I got it on last Friday.
Right. This is where you obviously it took you a really long time to get the Korg Odyssey, whereas I got the Korg Odyssey, and now I don't get the Dave Smith stuff too much later because it's the transatlantic thing, and they don't, or they haven't up to now. They might do now, had distributors to send these things out, and I'm guessing they're not making perhaps as many of these as perhaps some of the other models. But I'll just have to see you from afar. But you can hopefully tell us a little bit about that shortly.
Yes. I sort of measure my success in demonstrating a synth if I can get it before Nick Bat, which almost never happens. So I might have to gloat a fair amount during this whole...
Yeah, okay, that's understandable. I of course, I would like to point out, I try not to myself. I'm not, that's not something that's not in my nature. So I don't want it to get too unpleasant. Just keep it clean. Anyway, Marc, great to have you aboard. Thank you very much for joining us. And there, in what looks like very sunny climes, is Mr. Dave Spears from G4 Software in the synth cave. You look like you've got a load of bubble wrap over there, your right shoulder there.
Oh yeah, that's protecting that polygamist.
That just sounds like something that you wouldn't want to admit to, is it? How can you protect a polygamist? That's an untenable position to take.
I'm hiding a polygamist under some bubble wrap. It's just what we do over here occasionally.
Yeah, well, it's a hideout for those ne'er-do-wells that are so commonly found. After all, us Brits are always playing baddies in American films, so I guess it would tie in very, very nicely. You've got one under the bubble wrap right there. Anyway, yes. Dave, nice to have you aboard. Had a good week? Everything going all right for you?
Yeah, very interesting week. Went to something super secret last night, which obviously I can't talk about, but that was really good fun. And I'm starting to embark on upgrading my entire system, which is incredibly
what? Computer system?
Yes.
Or
new
just
computer, new monitors, new audio interface, all of that. I think the idea is to freeze the one that we've got, kind of go, right, that's it. It stays like that because we're going to have to refer to it constantly and then kind of start fresh.
So does that mean ultimately you're going to end up in a situation where you actually, say 5-6 years down the line, you've got 3 or 4 complete systems all in that space that you need to fire up at any given time?
Yeah. But we've done that since, from time immemorial. I've still got like 3 Ataris that if I need to refer to them, it's always that safety thing, isn't it? Maybe one day I'll need to kind of go around. But this I will, because I've got like terabytes and terabytes of data, and it's just like, I don't really want to port that over. I just want to refer to it. I like this idea of starting afresh. But, dude, the price of... It's not so much the gear, it's things like Thunderbolt cables. If you want a really long Thunderbolt cables, that's like a recipe for bankruptcy.
Almost as much as the CPU.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, I might be picking people's brains after.
Well, unfortunately, we don't actually have any problems with upgrading here because I think the newest machine I have is this laptop. Our main machine is a 2009 Mac Pro, which is still going strong. Fingers crossed. I'll cross everything, actually, because we're using it right at the minute. That's a really stupid thing to say, I've just realised. Anyway, so let's move on. We've got a topic that one of the reasons I wanted to get Marc on is because he has some experience of this. So I will play... and I need to do it on this, actually, because it's not a video I could get hold of. So I'm just going to go here. This is the Paul Vaux wand. So let me just play a little bit of this video. How's that? That looks good. Wand spelt with an O. This is known as the string exciter.
Welcome to our Kickstarter campaign. I'm Paul Vaux. What if you had a magnetic string exciter as easy to use as a pick? Imagine the wand. It would have to be light and fast so you could play fluidly with soft attacks and endless sustain. You'd want to be able to control timbre as each note evolves.
Wow, there's a lot of stuff on that.
Prototype. It's a little rough on the outside, but the electronics work well. You're hearing straight electric guitar with just a little reverb.
Right, I'm not going to play the whole thing, but basically, if you're aware of Paul Vaux's got some very unique and unusual technology that we first saw in the Moog guitar, which was 2008, I believe, where you have individual excitement built into all of the strings. Plus, it had a Moog filter in it as well. So it had some quite unusual tones. I must admit, I found the overtones of that initial guitar a little bit unusual. And I think this new technology, which is also present in the Vaux 96 acoustic sort of thing, which is like it reminds me of one of those things that stick on your face in Alien, but you put it on your guitar and it's got a whole bunch of kind of Predator type buttons on it that excite the different strings and also accentuate different harmonics. Now the wand is, I guess, the easiest comparison to make is the EBow, because it's a transduction kind of steel string thing, and his things work on acoustic guitars and electric guitars, and this one, this sounds like a more interesting project. I mean, it's actually on Kickstarter, which has, I think it's actually passed its goal. So they were hoping to raise 35k. They've got up to nearly 40, and they've still got 18 days to go. So obviously this has got some people quite interested. I don't know. EBow's not massively in vogue at the moment, but this has something else. And the reason I'm asking Marc is because I know Marc's had some experience of it. So is there anything you'd care to add, being as I'm completely uneducated as far as this goes?
Well, yeah, I'm no guitarist, which is hilarious. But this technology, it's really cool. It's like a sort of, to some degree, it's kind of like a portable version of the technology that Paul has in the Moog guitar and the Vaux 96. It's taking the string excitement aspect of that technology and putting it in a portable way instead of it being built into the guitar. And it's a lot different than the EBow, because EBow is just a general, I mean, it generates this sort of general field that excites the string, whereas the wand does what the Moog guitar and the Vaux 96 do, where it actually interacts with the string and responds to the string to generate the outcomes that you're generating. So there's like a lot of technology going on in the interaction between the string and the wand itself, which allows a whole bunch of like really expressive things, like, for example, the control of harmonics, which I think is absolutely magical. And also you get like much quicker attacks with this device because of how it interacts with the string. And and it's an expressive thing. It's not a thing that just sort of goes on the guitar that generates an outcome. It's a thing that you are specifically doing with intention, expressively, and that's why it's really special. I got to play with it. Like, I know Paul. Paul lives here in Asheville, and I actually got to play with one just before he announced it at NAMM, and it was just a really magical experience to actually have this thing. I played the earlier version. There's the production version is going to be a little bit different. But even with the early version, it was really a neat experience.
Ah, interesting. And Jem, I mean, I can see you have some stringed instruments on your wall behind you. I'm guessing you might have the capability of playing them, or I don't know, they might just be there for show. I don't know. I mean, I'm making all sorts of assumptions here. No, as we know that you are a keyboard player of some note. Have you ever experienced with that, had played with those kind of things with the string exciters? Did you ever get a chance to try the Moog guitar, any of that?
No, I mean I do. I play those ones behind me. They're just for hand-to-hand combat. But these, the thing I do actually play a stick.
Bloody hell!
I do use an EBow on it, so I'm actually very interested to try that because that's exactly. I mean, I use, as I say, the EBow is brilliant on that because you can place it on the. I play it flat. I don't play it like that. And you can just place the EBow on top of the sort of one of the strings, and you can basically just solo endlessly. It's a fantastic sound. But I'd be really interested to try that because I'm sort of all about trying different techniques with instruments like that. So yeah.
That does sound kind of cool. I'm curious to know as to how, I mean, with some of the lower strings, how fast is it, Marc? Because I mean, obviously, it takes a little while to generate the energy in those strings if you're not actually percussively hitting them.
Well, I think that's the sort of magic of this device. Is it doesn't take very long. It's not like you have to wait for it to happen. I had to wait for it to happen because like I don't have the technical proficiency with it to really, I mean, it takes a few minutes to sort of get the hang of how to place it and where to place it. And that's going to improve with the production model that's going to have like the haptic feedback. Like it will vibrate as it gets close to the string. So you can actually feel where the strings are without looking at them, which I think is really cool. And I could have used that because I spent a lot of the time going, trying to figure out how to get my hands to like have the muscle memory to place it right in the right place. But when you do place it in the right place, it's not like a pluck, but it is pretty much instantaneous.
That's interesting. I know, Rich, you play guitar as well. I've seen you. There's one, I can see it in the corner there. Sometimes you used to play between topics when we were obviously not cavalry. Well, when you were practicing or whatever. Have you? I mean, presumably you've tried an EBow. Have you tried any of the Porvo technology stuff?
No, I haven't, and it looks like it would be fun to do so. Actually, it probably is a lot of fun to use. I think related to your question about the attack time, basically, which is sort of what you were getting at, is how close to an actual pick attack do you get? You don't get that front looking thing, that sharp angle thing that you get with a pick attack, but based on how quickly you bring it towards the string and how intensely it's affecting the string, you can alter the amount of attack time based on the way, with most magnetic devices, and I assume with this thing. It's interesting because there's a history of devices that attempt to excite a guitar string in non-traditional ways, meaning not with a pick and not with your fingers.
Yes, and we covered the Gizmotron once, didn't we?
The Gizmotron, the EBow are both part of that history. This is now part of that, or hopes to be part of that history. I will say that I think $200 is too much, and I don't think he's going to sell very many of them at $200.
You may well be right, but I'm guessing, I mean, looking at that technology, it's not like just a battery and a coil like in the EBow. There's obviously a lot more going in it.
But yeah, I'm just saying you can't sell this thing to very many people for $200. If you want to sell a lot of them, you got to sell it for $120.
Well, maybe with scaling it'll come down. One thing that might be interesting: what happens if you kind of put a pick on it, and so you get the attack, and then you bring it in? Would it be possible to play in combination with a pick?
I wonder. That's a good question. And that's one of the cool things about like the experience with it, is we were constantly saying, well, what happens if we do this? We did the first test of what happens when you actually use it with the VO 96. And that had it wasn't really huge response, but there were some interesting outcomes. But yeah, you could theoretically pick and then use it. You could put a pick on it. I could see that happening.
I have a feeling because our guitar team talked to Paul at NAMM, and I think that he might have even mentioned something about that, about doing a combination of the two. But I've not checked the video out in recent months, so I couldn't testify to that. But it sounds like there could be a bunch of things. I know, Dave, it's not. I mean, I'm guessing you're not a guitarist, so perhaps it's not going to be your number one go-to call. But is there any other sort of similar keyboard type agitators, exciter type things that one could use? I don't think there is, I suppose, unless you.
No, not that I really know of. Be interesting to use it on a piano or something. I mean, we tried that
piano
with
strings.
Ebos
That would be
years ago.
interesting.
Yeah, we did try it with Ebos years ago. I think the thing that I quite like about this, and I know everyone's constantly going to make comparisons to the Ebo purely because it does vibrate the string, but that unlike an Ebo, you're not limited to one string. You know, you sit on the adjacent strings with an Ebo with the main string that's vibrated in the centre, whereas this you can play across it and stuff. I was talking to somebody about it last night. It's kind of weird in a way. In fact, there's two things about this. My first thought, when I first saw it, I thought it's more suited to your mate Doog with a name like the Wand and
Yes.
like his business, and also it looks kind of sex toy like. But also, it would be. I'd probably buy it for 200 if it doubled as a taser. I think that would be a really good thing.
That does interest. I mean, because obviously they must have to hold a reasonable amount of charge. You know anything about the battery life or any of that stuff, or what's going on in there? Is it rechargeable or is it replaceable, or what? Do you know what that's?
It is rechargeable. You just plug it in. And I think Paul has talked about, like, I don't know, I might be lying about this, but I remember him vaguely talking maybe about some sort of Bluetooth charging. But yeah, it has an adapter that you plug into. And Paul went to a lot of work to figure out which battery would be appropriate, best for this situation, and the most powerful. And really, when you pick the thing up, it's like, I picked it up, and it was like picking up, I don't know, this, which is just a little piece of plastic. And I was like, how can something that controls as much as this does be so light and small and have a powerful battery in it that's powerful enough to shake strings back and forth? I don't know. The whole thing was like magical to me. But yeah, it's rechargeable. And actually, I heard Paul say how long the battery would last if you just held it to a string constantly. And it was something like 6 hours, which you would never, ever do. So it actually lasts a long time.
Right. Well, that's good. I mean, so those are the kind of things. I mean, he's obviously a craftsman in terms of design, and I think the other thing is because of his other products, certainly the Vo 96 requires you to kind of retrofit to, in many cases, quite expensive and valuable acoustic instruments, which, you know, people are going to be a little bit nervous about perhaps from time to time. But yeah, anyway, interesting stuff. If you want to check that out, Paul Vo Kickstarter project. It's got 18 days to go. You can pick one up for, I think it's $199. There's a slightly cheaper version if you get one of the kind of $179 if you get the Gamma Run, but they've all gone. So that $20 is so you're going to be paying the full one. I'm going to go to the next topic now. Actually, no, I'll tell you what. Let's do the competition because it just feels like a good time to do it. So first of all, a message from our sponsors. He said, pressing the button vigorously. It's supposed to work. There we go. iZotope, of course. OZONE 6.1, the go-to mastering program for many, has so many different modules. Equalizer, dynamics, maximizer, exciter, imager, post, equalizer, dither, dynamic EQ, which is advanced only. There is an advanced and a regular version. For many people, it's, you know, slap it across the stereo bus, produce the master, but you can use it on individual tracks as well. It's got a lot of capabilities in there. You make smarter mix decisions aided by robust real-time visual feedback, and you can quickly achieve authentic sounds with every genre with a comprehensive bank of presets. And in fact, iZotope have lots and lots of tutorial stuff and ways to use it. So if you want to check out OZONE 6.1, you're into mastering, or you just want to improve the quality of specific tracks in a mix, do try it out. iZotope.com/iris. As with many of their products, it's a 10-day free demo. But if you're lucky enough to win our competition, then you won't have to buy it at all. So let me just go to last week's winner. We had as episode 403. Obviously, we're in 404 now. We picked a winner from last week's entries, and that chap is called Dodecahedron, and his Twitter handle is at Dodeca, DODECA3, Dodeca3. And he said, quite simply, I need to finalise my mixes, which seems like a fairly reasonable thing to put in the additional comments that you have in the Twitter, because we ask you to send a tweet. So if you want to get in touch, Mr. Dodecahedron, Dodeca3, then the iZotope Fairy will deposit OZONE 6.1 in your account. But if you're interested in winning for this week, we have another competition because iZotope sponsor the show. You can win iZotope OZONE 6.1. You need to be on Twitter and you need to tweet the hashtag the hashtag The Mix Doctor in one word, and the hashtag OZONE6. So The Mix Doctor and OZO6 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. You do have 140 characters, so that gives you a number of other characters to. I just want to see if that would give me a count. Anyway, the rest of the characters you can write something witty or something that that we can read. Anyway, it's certainly, we do like to have additional comments. So once again, we thank iZotope for sponsoring the show. Right, and next, let's get straight on to the next topic, which, if I remember correctly, if I press this button here, this is Stereoping or Stereoping. This is a synth controller demo. Basically, they make these dedicated controllers for synths that basically, frankly, have awful user interfaces. So this is the TX81Z. I'll fast forward it a little bit. So what's interesting about this is you've got access to all the individual operators, and they do bespoke ones for all sorts of other synthesizers as well. Waldorf stuff. I think some of the early Kawai stuff. So those sort of crappy 80s synthesizers, all the good ones that just had crappy interfaces, you can now bring them. And I really like some of the sounds that were coming out of this. It's sort of sounding quite fresh in terms of what we're used to, generally speaking. So I'm quite interested by this. Now, I don't know if anybody ever did back in the day get into FM synthesis. I know, Marc, you perhaps don't have a great love of the DX7 historically, but perhaps if I go to Mr. Lee Groves, who perhaps may in his earlier productions was using FM stuff, and I know we've talked in the past about FM being a kind of rather forgotten synthesis style because it's just so goddamn difficult to get inside. Got a TX81Z.
Groves.
So, oh, did I? Why did I say that? That's bizarre.
There is a striking similarity, isn't there?
I'm sorry about that, Jem. There is actually. You've got much more hair. You've got much more hair, and you're far more successcal. Anyway, Jem, I'm sorry about that.
We've got a DX7 Mark 1 here, funnily enough. To my right, you can't see it, but it's I can't lift it either for obvious reasons. Although I've got a Supermax E thing in it. So it's like got an arpeggiator and it's unison mode and all kinds of bits and pieces. So it is a pain to program, I've got to say. So that sort of thing would be quite interesting. But to be honest, I still struggle a bit with FM. I don't know. It's either that lately based thing or lots of clanging. Apart from that, I can't really.
I know what you mean, but I think it has more to give. Definitely, I do apologise for misnaming you there. I'm sorry about that. Change the
name on the thingy.
Yeah, no, I would if it was something I could do. It doesn't say Lee Groves, does it? God, flipping heck, that would be really embarrassing. No, it doesn't. Anyway, sorry about that, Jem. I don't know, Rich. Because there are some classic little synths that have you just unmuted yourself there, didn't you? It was nearly someone nearly got a drink. Where were we at? 47 minutes. So we're only about 28
I'm in the chat teasing them now. It's funny.
Neat idea, this. I mean, it's not unheard of. I mean, we know people make controllers and have made controllers for eons. I mean, Dave will, I'm sure, be able to tell us about, because he's made hardware controllers as well. I mean, but opening up something that
Roland made a whole business out of it with their instruments. In these days, when these instruments were being produced, user interfaces were what I used to call a hole in the fence of a construction site, where you have this tiny little pinhole through which you're examining this vast world behind it. And Roland's stuff at the time, the D550 and the MKS70, and they made hardware controllers for all that stuff because they knew it was a pain in the ass to operate. Everybody told them. And 81Z was very much one of those. It was a great synth. Took FM to a whole nother level with multiple waveforms. It's 4-operator FM, and offered a whole lot of really cool synthesis options, but it was just a real pain in the ass to operate. But it was actually a really cool synth. So this is actually a really neat box for people who want to use that. And as for FM, we all used it. We loved it. We embraced it like it was the new thing. It was the buzzword. Everybody dug it. And it still to this day does certain things better than anything else. So it's a wonderful thing. And I still use it. I quite like Native Instruments, FM instruments, and use them quite often for things where I need a very clear mid-range presence, and quite often I will also distort them because they kind of speak a little bit more like guitars than most synthesizers do. So you can do some very interesting mid-rangey things with FM instruments in the midst of a sea of analog stuff that allows them to stick out without being obviously FM-y. But anyway, I love the stuff, and I'm thrilled. I thought this was a kind of a cool, interesting niche device that they built. The funny thing is, I went to their website, clicked on, "What do you guys make?" and I got basically a blank page with 2 cables on it.
Yeah, well, it's really funny because yesterday we ran a story on this because I spotted this video and I thought, oh, great. And it's a really neat, I think I gave it a kind of rather link bait kind of headline, which is something to do with making an FM synth usable. And now there's no product left. I don't know whether they've sold out or whether perhaps, you know, it's updating the range or it's just one of those timing issues. I really don't know. But I think they're in kit form. They're €225. This is what I remember because it's not there anymore. And it's about 40 things, and you basically sort it all out yourself. But I think they are different for each synth. I don't think it's just a question of a new... I don't think there's a different set of switch, because some of them are multi-position switches for selecting waveforms, for instance, in certain other synthesizers, and some of them are just kind of dials, like they seem to be in the TX81Z version. But yeah, I mean, it's not a cheap thing, but I mean, if you think it could open up the world of one of those synths that, you know, Dave, that, you know,
three times what somebody would have paid for the 81Z, actually.
Really? How much was it when it came out? Was it that cheap?
Oh, no. Back then it was expensive, but in the intervening years, you could have bought one for $50.
Probably still.
You probably could have taken one from a garage sale for $20. I mean, there were people basically using them to hold the door open.
Future doorstops. Doorstops past, even.
Very small doors in some cases, because it's, you know, it's light and it's a single rack space.
Yeah, I suppose so. Oh no, Dave, you've no, 3 is Dave. That's right, Dave. You've created a controller. I mean, you know, and in many ways, I'm sure the was it the Fat Boy? Was that what it was called?
Yeah.
Could have probably controlled one of those if you programmed it up. But this just looks. I mean, I like the idea. I mean, and you've done the you know, worked with the people who made the Imposca controller, and it really changes your relationship with any instrument, doesn't it? If it hasn't got those front panel controls. I see you're holding something there. Ooh, flipping it.
Do you want to, this is the really funny thing, right? This is the dust on it.
Yeah. That's vintage dust, man. That's analog dust.
Isn't it?
But is that something that you're not using because you're not using the instrument, or because you only bought? Yeah, right.
Only because the display's packed up on the MKS. But no, it does. It changes everything. This really did remind me of the Fat Boy, because we did little overlays and stuff. My question with this was, I mean, the Fat Boy was really simple, and it was designed to overcome the whole GSXG. In fact, AWE sound cards, the old Creative Lab sound cards, because they were shipping something like 250,000 of those cards a month in Europe. And we were like, wow, it's got an interesting chip on it. You know, it sounded okay. But for me, you know, I was doing a lot of stuff for Roland Soundcam buys, I suppose, plural. And I didn't like that wallpaper and threw a letterbox thing. So it kind of came from that. And then we took it to Steinberg, were our distributor at the time. They had a division in Germany called Direct Services, and we took it to them. And Manfred, they were just about to distribute Rebirth. And he said, you should put a CC mode on it, because the AWE and the GS and XG stuff were non-registered parameters, all NRPNs. And he said, you should just put a controller mode on it as well, and we'll take X amount. And that kind of kick-started the whole thing for us. And we did pretty well out of it. But it was kind of like a band, really, you know. We were kind of fighting the world. And then when we started selling quite a lot of these, it was like, it was my idea. No, I funded it. It was my PA. So that was the kind of demise of that business. But I've always, and that essentially, when the Imposca 2 controller came into it, the frustration I had with the Fat Boy was that you didn't have this one-to-one correlation between the position of the knobs and the position of the controls on the interface, and that kind of interrupted the flow, even though it was amazing. And to be honest, we could have made a Fat Boy with like 3 knobs on it, because everyone went for filter cutoff, resonance and pan or something, you know.
Yeah.
I think at one point we did have a little prototype, but people like Doty come in and do it for like super cheap in You can't compete.
But
we did really well, and this really reminded me of that. I really liked it. In fact, it sounded. I like FM. There's something about FM.
It's got a very broad frequency range.
A really funny story in that Andy Shillito put me in touch with this girl singer who's been signed and is promising to be quite a big deal. And she called and said, "Oh, would you teach me how to use my favourite synthesizer?" And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" She went, "A DX7. I was like, "Dude, no one's asked me that for like 25 years." So that was kind of weird. But yeah, the Unders, Rick uses it. Obviously, Eno uses it. And the Mark 1 is in fact, I was recounting a story last night. I did a gig a million years ago, and none of the gear had turned up at this gig in Switzerland, so I was kind of cobbling together bits of gear from other bands, including like Billy Idol and whatnot, and I reprogrammed their DX7 so that we could get through our set, and I forgot to put their patches back on it. And as I was walking up the hill, all of a sudden it was like, as they went on. Anyway, that was quite funny.
Yes.
But yeah, cool. I like gizmos like this. And for me, this sounded interesting,
It did, and like you said, Rich, that the TX8 did have the fact that because most of the other ones just had sine waves, so the fact that you could change the waveforms is interesting. I know, Mark. I mean, you're a keen synthesist. I mean, one can create FM patches with analogs and modular and stuff, and one often does, but it's almost harder. It's just as difficult to control in the analog world as it is in the digital world.
Well, I always say the thing that I don't like about FM is that it's a really abstract mathematical concept. Not that it isn't capable of creating cool sounds or even a lot of the, all the analog sounds, although without the analog quality. But still, I mean, as a synthesis, it's super powerful and it creates some really interesting things. But its biggest problem has always been the fact that it's very abstract, although you can learn it. And then the interface has always been terrible because it was right there at that point where, and part of my hatred for the DX7 is philosophical more than anything. It's that when it arrived, it created a preset culture.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. It was inexpensive. It was totally polyphonic. Well, not totally polyphonic, but you know what I mean. And then it created this preset culture where synthesists became people who chose that awful electric piano sound, which I don't know if I can forgive a DX7 for that, but yeah. But this idea is fantastic. I totally endorse this concept. I had a Yamaha PSS 680, the one that has the big blue drum buttons under the keys, and it had a really basic FM section that was so fun to use because there was no menu diving. It was just buttons and increments. And it was super easy, and I loved it. I was like, I'm doing FM, and no one knows. But
your dirty secret.
I've said it. People are listening to me now. But no, I think this is a great idea, and I wish people would really pursue it, like on a larger scale.
Wow,
Jem played the Doogie Howser theme tune, wasn't it, Mark?
Jem has right there. I can see it. He's got the DX7. It was a heavy old thing, wasn't it?
It's heavy.
And you've got the ROM cartridge in there as well. Is that the factory sounds, or what have you? Or was that one of the Mega ROM? What did they call those things?
It's. Oh, I can tell you what. I need to go to the gym after this.
Or maybe you don't.
It's heavy.
You see that? It's the Master Group keyboard and plucked. There you go.
Oh, sure.
I can tell you use it a lot, right? But the other thing, I mean, also
programs, right?
The other thing that's easy to forget is that actually at the time it had quite an unusual keyboard feel. It was that sort of semi-weighted sprung sort of thing, which I guess meant that also gained quite a lot of popularity with players who were perhaps coming from more of a weighted keyboard or piano side of things that needed a keyboard. I mean, like, I can do, my clav and sort of organy kind of sounds as well. I mean, it did some of the emulation. I never forget. There was a band who came into a club where I used to do a lot of sound called Jazz Jamaica, and I think a lot of the guys had come over from Jamaica to be in the band, and they were the brilliant horn players. They just did that kind of classic ska reggae, and the guy who played the piano was using a DX7 the whole time, and he had a DX7 piano patch on it, which is really shockingly awful. It really doesn't sound anything like a piano at all, but you did just have to make do with what you could get. And it's not so good at some of those things. So, Rich, you look like you wanted to come in there.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff I need to address here. First of all, there were some people back then doing things with breath controllers and DX7s that were stunning. Second of all, DX7 was not the beginning of the preset culture, though it certainly did a lot to advance it because it was so complicated compared to what people had seen before that people were more reliant on those presets than they might have been on previous instruments. But by the time DX7 appeared, we had 3 or 4 years of nonstop preset-filled instruments that had been released. So that culture was already well underway. Now, it was definitely spurred on by the appearance of the DX7. And people loved those presets. It's a testament to how well they wrote those presets in terms of how popular that instrument became for the time that it did, at least until the D50 showed up, which was Persing's work, I believe, in the programming. But anyway, so there's that. And it doesn't do, you see, if you evaluate it in terms of how well it does what all of what came before it did, then you don't get to see what it's good at. Because it's really good at certain things. And people were doing a lot of really interesting things, often with racks of 8 of them. But nevertheless, we're doing some really interesting things with them at the time that weren't just the tinkly Rhodes and the familiar tubular bell, although that tubular bell was magnificent. It's a testament to how well programmed it was, that it did do as well as it did, and that it did rely so heavily on those presets because they knew people weren't going to be able to program this thing.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Dave, I seem to remember Dave. There's what was the name of the chap? Was it Dave Gampson? Did we have him on?
Oh yeah, Dave Gampson. All the Scrittipility stuff was done on.
Yeah, I mean TX8. Was it TX802 or TX? What was the big rack of things? I forget.
The 816.
It's 816. TX816.
Yes,
was
816. That's it.
The 8 rack was the 816, and then the DX7 and then there was a TX816, which was 2 rack spaces, which basically took the DX7 architecture and laid it across multiple engines, and it's cool.
Yeah,
DX1s go for quite a lot of money now.
Oh, I love one of those.
And they reckon that the A to D converters are very different in those, so you don't get that kind of real FM aliasing that goes on. But there's something. In fact, I was fortunate. I was able to use a DX7 back in the day with one of those. Remember those Jellinghouse controllers? The massive thing. It's about the size of a small house, and that was quite something because, it looks. FM synthesis looks impenetrable. When you look at a DX7 and you're like, oh, okay, so we've got these stacks and these operators and these algorithms and you're trying to make sense of it. But when it's actually laid out in this control, and that's what I thought was really cool about this controller. Once you start looking at it in a kind of
logically laid out way,
I've got this, we've got this big thing that, analog's great. It's obviously super, super duper popular at the minute. And analog's great, but I think a lot of companies have kind of missed the point in that the tactile control is everything. There's room for everything, but really that tactile control.
That's maybe the thing that's the most, I think that's a very fair point. But like I say, I have messaged, it's called Gregor Zoll, which is a fantastic name, to say, so what happened to the stock? And I'm hoping that I'll get a reply. I might have had one. No, I haven't had one yet. Not yet. So maybe there will be one forthcoming. But just it might be worth revisiting some of those synths that are sort of dusted in the cupboard that you wouldn't touch because they're such a nightmare to program if you can plug something like this into it.
Sorry, the one question about this is obviously it showed the CC mapping going on. But you see a lot of synths back in those days were only controllable via SysEx and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true.
And there was a massive lag on stuff like that, particularly down a MIDI cable. It was like, whoa, is this going to work or is it going to just crash?
And it really clogged it up, didn't it? Yes, I remember because I was involved in early patch librarians which used system exclusive, and I spent a lot of time with my head inside the backs of the old roller manuals, for particularly the D110, had pages and pages of parameters in basically hex code that you could access, but it was never much fun. But there is the complete antithesis to that is what Marc has got in his arsenal at the moment, which is the Prophet 600. I've got I have got. Let me see. You sent. Oops, I've just renamed the file rather than play.
I have to go. I can't watch this.
Okay, let's see if I can play this. Let's have a listen. So this is some of the stuff that you put in here now. You were playing some patches in this, Mark. This is like a 3-minute track. Yeah. Unless it's got a lot of silence in it at the end. Do you have a long fade on it?
Maybe. There's a lot of different sounds.
Oh, I can hear that. So, I mean, how do you, let me just pass it forward a little bit. I'll try and maybe I'll upload this and people can check this out at their leisure. Oh, that sounds quite radical. So what is it about the 600 that immediately grabbed you? Because, I mean, most of the people on the panel, I know Robbie Bronneman was gagging for one. I don't know how you feel about one, Jem. I mean, I know you like analog stuff, but obviously in your job, repeatability and reliability are a kind of issue as well, and time. So you may well be craving one as well, but that's...
I've got one on order, actually.
Have you? Well, there we go. So I'm pretty sure everybody is quite interested to hear what you say. So, what sort of first impressions there, Mark?
It is, I suppose it's really natural for you to assume, like, okay, if it's Prophet 6, everyone's bringing stuff back from the past. So Dave Smith is going to bring back the Prophet 5 in a more modern version or whatever. And so when I turned it on, I just was like expecting, like, okay, so the Prophet 12 is their hardcore synthesis polyphonic synthesizer. This is going to be kind of an analog treat sort of synthesizer. But what I found out was that it's super powerful for an analog synth. I mean, it's not just, hey, let's play analog chords. It's possible, like I've said elsewhere, you can actually use the thing for sound design. It's functionally powerful because it's so rare that you have an analog polyphonic that you can modulate the oscillators.
Do beg your pardon. Yep, carry on.
You can modulate the oscillators and filter with oscillators and that sort of thing, which are usually functions that were shaved off of polyphonic synthesizers, especially in the past. They didn't really put all of the fun, like, synthesis aspects into it like this has. And the fact that it has 2 oscillators, it has a high-pass filter, which, I love the CS50 because of that. Polyphonic synths should always have a resonant high-pass filter, and this has that. So, like, you get the diversity of sound it is capable of is not just about analog, it's also about synthesis. And I think that's one of the things that I found most exciting about it.
Does it offer any multi-timbrality, any splits or anything like that, or is it pretty much that's it, 6 voices and you're good to go? I,
of course, haven't done any of the MIDI exploration, but as far as I can see, there are not splits. No.
Right. Okay.
One of the other cool things that I love about it is the fact that it has a unison function, and I typically hate analog unison functions because who wants to hear 8 oscillators stacked on top of each other? It makes one specific type of sound, and I've always hated it. My first synth was this Juno 106, and I just skipped that stacking because 6 DCOs on top of each other is awful. It's a terrible sound. Anyway, someone's like, no, it isn't, Marc Doty. How dare you? Anyway. But this synthesizer allows you to decide how many oscillators are in your monophonic mode. So it's a full-on monosynth as well, and a powerful one. And I love that. I mean, it covers all the bases.
Oh, that sounds it. Has it got a 2-pole filter mode? Because that's something that I'm really starting to dig. I don't know, there's been a couple of, since I had the Dominion 1, and there's a couple of other German synths that have just 2-pole. And I love the sound of 2-pole filters. It's really an unusual, it seems to be quite an unexplored. I think the Moog Sub 37 here's got it as well, and it's definitely on poly sounds. It just sounds fabulous.
I use that a lot on the Pro 2, but on the Prophet 6, the low pass is 4-pole and the high pass is 2-pole.
Right. Okay. So, anybody got any questions there? Who hasn't had their hands on one? Yeah. There we go. Dave's coming in. Go ahead, caller.
Can I have one? No. Is unison? I know we're talking about unison, but is it detunable? Detune it across the voices.
You can detune. Here are the 2 things you can do. You can detune oscillator 1 from oscillator 2, and there's a function called slop, which basically it makes the oscillators, all of them, pitch unstable, so they drift around a little bit. And so it can really, the first sound I made on that, the file that I gave to Nick, I had that not relatively high, but I had it up there because it generates amazing chorusing by having all of those oscillators not quite in tune with each other. And you can turn it up to the point where it's just a noise. I mean, it gets really out of tune with everything. But so you do have the option of detuning the oscillators, like the first oscillator and the second oscillator.
And then slot between the sets. All right, okay, I see.
And then if you punch that into unison,
right,
you still retain that if you punch it into unison. Because that's the thing that frustrated me about the 5 and the 10 is like, particularly the 10, you got all these voices, and I like unison, but there has to be a detune function on there, otherwise it just sounds a bit kind of everything out of weird, in phase, too much, horrible. But that's for me. I want this 6, and I want it. I mean, we've got a 5 and we've got a 10. I've got 600, but I want it because the one thing I've missed out of everything on the sequential stuff is LFO sample and hold waveform, which sounds insanely trite, but for me that's quite important. I know, isn't it weird? You know, it's just like I want it just because of that.
Just because of that,
right?
It's on.
But I heard a demo today as well. There's a new Strymon effects. I know Marc's stuff's great, and but there's this guy Peter Dyer, and it was like how to sell me an effects pedal because there was no whittling. There's, like I said on my Facebook thing, there's no ego. It's just like this really classy playing. And I see he had a Prophet 6, and I was just like, oh my god, the combination of this new Strymon pedal and this Prophet 6, I'm gonna melt.
What does the Strymon pedal do? Does anybody?
It's a new thing. It's like it's a digital thing as opposed to emulating an analog thing. And I think it's a bit like the Ursa. Was it the Ursa Major? Anyway, it's really interesting.
For those of you on tip, there's the Digitech Polara reverb, which does some really nice big shimmery stuff, and that's only like £100. I mean, it doesn't do all of what a Big Sky would do, obviously, but it gets that sort of big wash of stuff. If you're looking for something hardware, it's much less costly, which is kind of interesting. So definitely. Okay, Jem, where do you stand on Unison?
Well, actually, it's funny enough. I've just bought a 106, and I know that it's the world's worst unison because
you've got to press those two buttons, haven't you, to get it to?
Like someone lining up combs all in a line. And just kind of like this kind of terrible sound. But I've just put I'm just getting the Kiwi mod put in it, which you can detune the voices in unison now on it. And it's quite lush, or apparently it will be. So yeah,
that sounds.
I like unison. It's very good, obviously, because I have a sometime prog rock band, and obviously unison is brilliant, because the guitarist has given it this, you can go, no,
take that,
10 voices. Yeah, so it's kind of I like it as long as you got a bit of portamento on, maybe because the good thing about the Prophet 600 was the one I had anyway, the two oscillators in it, they weren't very good at keep catching up with each other. So if you put the portamento in, you get this lovely kind of ARP Quadra-esque kind of slewing thing going on. So I'm unison.
Nice. I might wait for the Prophet 7, just because then you got. I don't know.
The Spinal Tap Prophet.
That's right. Yeah, or the Prophet 11, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, Marc, I'm guessing you're going to have some. You've got it so that presumably you can make some videos, right?
Yes, that's why they've sent this to me, and it's a terrible time for me. I love that I can use that adjective because everybody sent me a synth at once. I've got 3 different new synths that I need to make videos for all at once, and it's pretty nightmarish. But I should be ashamed for saying that because come on.
It's interesting you say that because in terms of the synth reviewers lot, I did before Messer. I did 3. I did the Dominion, the JDXI, and there was some. And the Sub 37, and you kind of get into a groove, and it's then when you're doing it. But when you stop, you have to kind of get back into it, and it takes a little bit of time. So in many ways, it's good to do them in batches because you're in the zone when you're doing that from a reviewing point of view. So that is the upside.
But yeah, I'm very excited to make the videos. I'll be doing nothing else in my free time. I'll go to work, and then I'll come home and do videos.
So you're living the dream, Marc.
Woo! Yes. I don't know where the riches are in this dream, but certainly the the synthesizer part of it's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's definitely great fun. But I think the Prophet 6. I mean, I remember because I interviewed Dave at NAMM, and he said in the summer. So I'm guessing we're pretty imminent, and it seems like everybody else has got one. Oh yeah, I've got. There's lots of people with. Apart from you, mate. And you should probably, yours should be coming. But I think stateside, obviously, because they're much easier to kind of manage and get. They don't have a centre over here where you can just sort of pop in and pick one up. So it's not quite.
I get occasional emails saying, "Oh, end of June. Oh, a bit of July." Oh, so it's maybe they're rowing it over.
Yeah, there quite possibly. It's one that's got to go to several people. So, I mean, talking in the summer, have you got a lot of projects on the go then, Jem? Is there more? I mean, obviously, this project that you've been doing with Gary Barlow, presumably, does that mean you're his go-to guy?
I'm one of them, hopefully. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things bubbling under that I can't discuss yet because I'm not. Well, I'm never sure whether I can or I can't. So my default setting is I'll just kind of.
Yeah, you can't.
In case I get the phone call going, "What were you doing?"
Because I know Gary listens to the show. Yeah.
Big fan.
He probably does, He probably does.
No, he does. You know what? He's a real synth. I was going to say geek.
Yeah.
Really?
He loves his keyboards. He absolutely loves them. He's the studio, their place it's fabulous. He just collects all kinds of things. He bought Jupiter 8 the other week, and just kind of lots of. He's very clued up. He knows his stuff.
That's that shows my ignorance. That really surprises me because I thought he was more of a piano songwriting guy, and kind of traditional production, vocal arrangements, that kind of thing. I didn't really go. That's great to hear.
Dude, a friend of mine's been in Take That. He's a guitarist, and he's been in there like the first iteration, and he's gone right the way through. He's part of that whole Absolute crew. This guy, Milton McDonald, phenomenal guitarist. And he, in fact, Chris and Gary Barlow are kind of reasonably friendly, and he said his studio is just like stunning. Nothing gets in there unless it's absolutely top class.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. That sounds really interesting. Well, maybe he'll come on the show one day, although I doubt it.
And he'll go, that was really interesting.
Yeah, or maybe not. There's something else I was looking at here. Now, where is my... I think I've lost that. Hold on, let me just put this up. This was just a drum programming thing, which I thought would be interesting to look at. I think because we all have to put beats to a lot of our music. This was on Attack Magazine, and it's an article by a chap called Bruce Asher. And he calls it the psychoacoustics of drums, which I think is perhaps not quite the right thing to say, because it's not about the acoustics. It's more about the kind of timings and the variations in velocity and decay and all of those little tricks to sort of de-machine those machiney beats. And I'm just wondering whether or not there's anybody got any particular favourites in here. Rich, you let out a big sigh, so I'm just wondering whether or not this any of this has any relevance to you or not. But there's
relevance. My examination of this topic began in 1983. What do you want to know?
I'll tell you one thing that the one thing that I've recently become much more because when I program drums, I try and not quantize as much as possible, which means it takes me a lot longer because I can't play. But variation of decay and velocity are the things that really make a difference to me.
Well, I just went through, when I saw this topic this morning, I ended up going back through a whole lot of files of stuff I was doing in the 80s as programming experiments to try to improve my sense of what this article sort of starts to address, which is how to give some life to electronic tracks that are basically being generated from samples. And some of the tricks he features are stuff that's useful and that I've done, but there's a whole lot more. And what you just described about the way things decay and the way, alternating samples is all well and good, but when I learned this thing, we were using a Linn drum and there was no alternating of samples. You had to create it in a combination of loudness and timing. You basically had to adjust. You had a very limited number of things you could adjust to try to bring this about at the time. And what I was doing, this is really running down a long tangent, but I won't go all the way there. But I used to use Dr. Click to send timed control voltages into my Linn drum and to various other devices, and you could adjust the wave shapes in the Dr. Click, so you could change things like pitch and delay times in timed increments based on FSK code. and you could create all kinds of very interesting things in the drum patterns by doing that. And I spent tons of time just writing basically experimental drum patterns and working on this very topic that this sort of lightly touches on, is how to make these things sound interesting and less mechanical. And then the funny thing is 10 years later, people are hiring me to make things sound as mechanical as possible.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point.
It's like wasted on some level, because 10 years later, they all wanted me to basically keep everything completely, on a grid and mechanical.
Interesting. I mean, Jem, do you find that you program beats? I mean, I don't know how much of that stuff that you're doing, or do you find that you generally use, because there are sort of higher level programming tools, like Stylus and what have you, which have all that kind of variation built into the control layer for the samples. Or do you still get in and kind of niggle around with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those. Sorry, the sun's right. I'm kind of one of those keyboard drummers. So it's quite easy to actually just to play the kit like that. So with things like Stylus, I'll tend to, because you can break the loops out over the whole keyboard, so I'll just tend to play it rather than just let it run. And you kind of, I won't quantize it too much. I will do, obviously for some stuff it needs to be quite sort of linear, but I think it depends on the song really. It depends on what's required. Sometimes it's a live drum kit sound you're trying to get sort of to replicate, in which case just play it, or I can do that, or it's quite a lot of loops I'll then cut up in Pro Tools and move them around, like audio. I do a lot of audio chopping around, so it just depends on what's required.
Yeah, no, interesting. So do you do, when you're playing a drum track, because if you're a proficient keyboard drummer, it's a great skill to have, do you tend to do a take, or you do it in sections and then do pickups into the turnarounds and stuff?
I tend to start off. It's like being in a rehearsal room with the drummer just won't shut up for 10 minutes. I tend to just do a lot of fills, and then I'll try and do a take. But then it's kind of you kind of have to get into a drummer's mind sort of set and try not to, because I get terrible red light syndrome. I always have, and it's just this thing. I go, right, here we go, and it's like, oh god. So it'll tend to be. I'll either get very lucky or do it, but then the other things I do is I tend to have like, I'll do the hi-hat separately, or it varies really.
Okay. And Dave, you have a history. You are a drummer, so but at the same time, you're using sequence stuff in terms of modular things. I mean, how do you tend to tackle that?
Everything.
Whatever.
Just use everything. Everything. Yeah. No, I'm a bit like Rich on this subject. I did a whole series of tutorials for a magazine called Style Council a million years ago. It went on for about 5 years, and it was like drum programming part 987, trying to inject a little bit of feel. So yeah,
once more with feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Just quantize it. No, everything. I mean, I do use Stylus a lot, but not necessarily with the loops. I mean, I use the menus and create patterns and stuff like that, and it's a combination of everything. A little bit of a little bit of keyboard drumming, a little bit of pad stuff. The one thing I used to love was, I wish I still had it actually, there was a thing called a drum cat, and that was hooked up with a SideQuest drive and these great sample sets, and what they'd done is they sampled the left hand playing and right hand strokes. So it was probably for a while the most kind of human I got things. But I did all those MIDI file things with Bruford and worked with all those guys, and that was fascinating because you see where people start
their stuff.
Yeah, and I love that. You're working with somebody like this guy Paul Kodish, who did like Firestarter and all the Prodigy stuff, and you're looking at, sometimes you're tidying stuff up because they will drift from the click, but you can kind of, once they're bang on, you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's really interesting where he's pushing that. And then other times with people like Bruford, you just go, I need to quantize it all. No, and that's a complete lie. No, he was amazing, but it's just the emphasis, and I studied this for years and years.
I suppose
so. Yeah, sorry.
I suppose the thing is whether you're going for a real drummer feel or electronic drums to introduce drums into a feel into those. I know, Marc, some of the stuff that you when you were releasing more music, often had a live. I think it was a live drum track which maybe you played. Is that right? Am I right in that?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, most of the time it was me. I also I recorded friends playing drums and then would use them. And yeah, for years I did dance music, like throughout the 80s and the early part of the 90s, actually throughout the 90s too. And I went through drum machines and went through samples, and I got to be a keyboard playing, like a keyboard drummer too. And I used to have all of my drums set up on my samplers with the same setting because my hands knew where the toms were, But when it got to the point where I started doing retro music and I wanted real sounding drums, it's such a hassle to sit there and program everything to try to fake the listener into thinking it's real that I gave up. And I was just like, why am I not just recording drums? And one of my favorite drum tracks of all time are the drums to Louie Louie, because they are so passionate and so messy, and they really sort of take the environment into account. And I started to say, okay, the most important thing about expressive drumming is how the drums interact with the room that the drums are in, as opposed to how the stick interacts with the head. So I started recording drums single mic in a room. I'd get a crappy old drum set and a single mic, and I'd find the place in the room where the drum sounded the most perfectly mixed. And that's pretty much how I've done my drums outside of like the music I do for the demos with my music.
That's an intro. We talked quite at length about the Glyn John techniques and the 3 and the 4 mic technique, which is really interesting. If you missed that last week, I thoroughly recommend. We got some great insight from the panel there. It was really good. But yeah, it's a matter of time and timing. You've got the timing on the minutiae level of whether the hi-hat is early or late or whatever, and then the time it actually takes to do that, which is on a sort of more zoomed out level. And those are I guess this is why things like Spectrasonics. Rich, you mentioned something in there. Was it addictive drums you mentioned as well? Does that work in the same way?
That's good.
It's sort of like BFD, but
right.
I like it better.
So you can mix. Yeah. You've got that level of control over the mix as well, which is really.
You can move the virtual microphone around the drum. Wow. You know what I mean? You can move it closer or further away. You can change the angle of the thing. It's got amazing tools. I really like it, and I really like them, which is why I mentioned it in the chat room.
No, I suppose the thing that people must be doing as well is, maybe, or if I was a drummer now, I would be thinking, maybe what I should be doing is going out with an electronic kit and these big libraries and going, well, here's the performance. Here is the performance. Now you can just do what you like with it, rather than mic the whole thing up. Is that what people are doing?
That's what Omar Hakim was doing in the early 80s.
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Going out with his Lynn drum machine and programming for people. My friend Joe Franco was doing the same thing. I was getting gigs as a drum programmer in the early 80s. Drummers used to hire me to sit there and watch them play and program what they had just done.
Wow.
I had exactly the same experiences. That's so weird, isn't it? Exactly the same. It's so fun. During that period, like, loads of musicians just didn't want to be asked with MIDI and stuff like that. So they were like, and they didn't. And everyone thought they were a drummer initially, and then they realised that actually everything they programmed was rubbish because the hi-hats played constantly no matter what else they were kind of hitting. And then after a while, it was like, I had this kind of epiphany. It was like, having been a player for so long, in the mid-80s, it was like, I made much more money out of drum programming than I ever did out of playing. Just literally on call with the local studios. It's like, right, I'll never forget this. It was one thing, I was given like one of those RX5s, and it was like, recreate the drum intro to Money for Nothing. And I just kind of... because this producer's attempt was just beyond hideous. It was just like, like throwing the drum machine down the stairs. It was just brilliant.
Excellent.
Speaking of Omar Hakim, that was Omar Hakim who played that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that drum intro. Yeah, Neil Dorfsman recorded it at a power station.
Wow. Well, it's been. I think I'm going to have to leave it there because I've got a chap coming around to help me with the fly. Because basically, next week, the 30th, there's Brighton modular synth meet on the 30th of May, and we're doing a little competition where people can upload a video of their synth setup there, and the Sonic State users will vote on it. And they'll win some pretty good stuff, actually, from Thonk and London Modular. But trying to get all of this written down on a piece of paper that will just go on the table next to them and convey how easy it is for them to do it is actually quite a challenging thing. So that's my effort so far. And I've got a proper designer coming to kind of go, Yeah, okay. Let me sort that out for you shortly. But I've been once again fantastic. Thank you ever so much for everybody. And once again, Jem, I'm ever so sorry for misnaming you there. I might just create. I'll do a joke lower third for you at some point. But it is fair. I don't know if you know Lee Groves, but there is a similarity. I think it's just face shape, and I don't know where I even thought of that because I haven't spoken to him for probably 8 or 9 years. So there you go. But then I haven't spoken to you for very long, for a while either. But so I don't know what if you don't know the guy, I suppose it doesn't.
You'd really like Lee. You'd get on really well with Lee. Definitely, Jem.
Oh, really? All right, okay. Bring him on.
Lee was the kind of guy who ran the MIDI and the sequencer rigs for Spike Stent during that sort of golden period of all of those mixes that he mixed everybody forever at Metropolis. And
he was one half of AMG. You remember the Sample People?
Oh, right, okay. All right.
There we go. Anyway,
Top chap.
I've got you on, and that's more important. Anyway, thank you so much, Jem. It's been great to have you
Very
on.
welcome.
Any other time you want to come on, just hop in. It's always good to have you, even though I know you're a busy guy, and obviously it sounds like you're doing 18-hour days, transatlantic shifts. So
Well, it's just the weirdest thing because it's only Wednesday afternoons for some reason. I'm just thinking, all right, I've got some time, and then the phone rings. I've got to go and do something. Like, if you do this on a Thursday, it'd be fine. I'd be here every week.
it would just change, though. It would just change. I know it would. But anyway, thanks ever so much, Jem. Great to have you on board. And are you doing any prog gigs? Got any sort of touring stuff in the summer, or is that not? No.
Actually, I'm going to the Brighton thing. I'm going to the modular thing at Brighton.
Modular. Oh, well, look out for our guy Ed. He'll be there with a ridiculously complicated and fascinating looking camera rig. So maybe you can.
Okay, brilliant. I'll be there.
Anyway, brilliant. Thank you very much. I also want to say thanks to Rich once again for joining. It's been great having you aboard as well. And there is no show next week. I might say now. I should probably say because I'm going to Brussels to see my sister-in-law MEP. She's going to show me around the Parliament.
Wow.
And I'm going to drink beer and stuff. So,
buy chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate and beer. That's all
Bring
I
home
say.
chocolate. Yeah, bring home chocolate for the wife. Absolutely.
Well, she's going. We're all going. Actually, it's a family outing. It was a Christmas.
And she can bring home her own damn chocolate.
Yeah, absolutely. And there won't be any left by the time we get on the train, I'm sure. Anyway, thank you very much again, Rich. Pleasure to have you aboard, and thank you. And also, Mr. Dave Spears over there in GeForce Software Synth Cave HQ. Thanks for joining us as well. It's been great having you.
Very welcome. I'm so disappointed we didn't get to that Tony Swain again.
We will do.
If only for one reason, and it has to be when Marc's on here because he's an SH1000 fan. We've talked about the SH1000, and that did that bass line. So yes,
I've got the bass line. I have it queued up. This was Tony Swain, producer. We will cover it another topic because it is really interesting. Some of the stuff he did. Anyway, thank you, Dave, and also Mr. Marc Doty. Thank you there, the Bob Moog Foundation and Automatic Gainsay, and soon to come videos. A synth summer of videos, a summer of synth videos.
The Prophet 6, the Korg Odyssey. And of course, the awesome Analog Solutions Leipzig S.
Yeah.
Those are all coming at you.
Busy. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. In fact, what have we posted? We posted today, actually, did a little presentation with the E Instruments Electric R, which is the Rhodes, which I have to say sounds absolutely fantastic. Like their Grand S and Grand Y, really nice piano libraries. They do sound lovely. Nice. If you get a chance to check that out, it's well worth it. It's the thing that they do, which is the bottom half of the velocities. When you hit it really softly, they just sound so beautiful. I mean, as well as all the other ranges, but it's the detail down at the sort of lower velocities is astonishing. Really sounds lovely. Anyway, that's it for this week. Remember, there's no show next week. And don't forget, if you want to enter the competition, you've got 2 weeks this week. So you just need to tweet the hashtag #TheMixDoctor and OZONE6. Add to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. to win your chance of Ozone 6.1 from iZotope. That's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I will now fade to black. See you later.